Hello, everybody. Andrew Fantasia here, and welcome to the 10th review marathon. I can't believe we're at number 10 already for the review marathons. That's nuts. We made it to 10. As always, do the like, do the subscribe, do all that stuff if you like me. If you don't like me, don't do that because that would be weird and counterproductive. And also, if you like me, don't forget to go to Amazon.com right now where you can get my fantasy novel, We Were Wizards. This is the first one, Secrets of the Stones. There's another one too, but read this one first. That's me. That's my name. I wrote this book. That's the picture on the back that proves that I wrote it. Otherwise, anybody could take credit for it. Nope. There's copyright too. We're safe. But it's fantasy. It's fun. There's swords. There's even a boomerang in here. Read it. Enjoy it. And hey, leave a review if you've already read it and enjoyed it. Even if you already read it and you hated it, leave a bad review. Any review is a good review, as far as I'm concerned. Unfortunately, for Review Marathon 10, it would have been nice to go, enormous because it's the 10th one. I had a really big one back in number 8. I broke my record. And this time, it's actually the opposite. This is the smallest one, just because this is a very busy time of year for me with work. Plus, I was out of town for a whole week, so that's a long time spent not watching anything. So this quarter, between the months of April and June, I only got to see 22 movies. And if you don't know the rules of review marathons, this is your first one. The rule is every 3 months I watch as many movies as I can that I have never seen before, but they have to be at least 1 year old. With that being said, the 22 movies I watched were a lot of fun. It was a good batch. There weren't too many that I would call stinkers. Mostly they were A-okay. So let's take a look at them right now and see how fast we can talk about them. And go. April Fool's Day. One of the most pleasantly surprising slasher movies I've ever had the pleasure of seeing. There are some familiar faces from Back to the Future and Friday the 13th Part 2, and it's all executed like a classic whodunit with a twisted sense of humor. I guarantee you won't see the ending coming, even though you're going to think you know exactly what's going on. I can't think of a more perfect use of the film's title and setting. Now all we need are horror films set on the 4th of July and whatever holiday August has, and we'll have the whole set. Bill and Ted Face the Music. The Bill and Ted flicks have always been just these very wholesome, positive, light-hearted stories, and this legacy sequel is no exception. It feels like these characters and this world haven't missed a beat. Most comedy, like Community, for example, excels at taking small-stakes situations and portraying them as if the stakes are high. Bill and Ted, on the other hand, takes high-stakes situations and plays them so casually you feel like you're just watching kids in the schoolyard playing make-believe. Even though I'm not an enormous fan of this franchise, there's an undeniable charm to that, and I love that Face the Music continues to embrace it. Keep being excellent to each other, dudes. Bloody Birthday. 3 kids are born during a solar eclipse and it makes them pure evil. This was decent enough, a fun 80s slasher complete with sex scenes in the back of a panel van and avocado green carpets. The child actors do a damn good job playing terrifying little scamps. I'm surprised this never got any kind of sequel. Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. Its premiere at South by Southwest was over a year ago, so this counts. It's another surprising slasher movie. In fact, it ended up reminding me a lot of April Fool's Day. The performances are fantastic across the board. The main conceit of this film is that it's taking a jab at Gen Z, their inability to cope without phones, their online personas bleeding into real life, and just the foibles of their generation as a whole. There's a lot going on with this, and it can be pretty subtle at times, so multiple viewings are a must. Chud. I'm so glad I finally saw this uber popular underground classic. It was way better than it had any right to be. One of the wells 80s pop culture loved returning to was toxic waste, and Chud tells an environmentally conscious story about what happens when toxic waste disposal gets out of control. The answer is, it creates mutants who stalk the sewers of downtown Manhattan. Groovy stuff. And considering it came out during the Reagan administration, I was pleasantly surprised with how eco-friendly, pro-homeless, and anti-capitalism it was. Creepshow 2. I guess I dug this more than Creepshow 1, but that didn't exactly set a high bar. I really like the first 2 stories, and they are pure Stephen King. The third story, though, with the hitchhiker was kind of bland, and it just kept going on and on and on with very little payoff. It's like they told 2 really cool stories and then gave up. I still prefer The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. The Final Destination movies 1 through 5. The Final Destination franchise was in full swing when I was in high school. Unfortunately, high school Andrew couldn't be bothered with such fine pleasures as slasher films, so my belated introduction to Final Destination came at last, and I dig it. Seeing a bunch of mid-2000s teens getting slaughtered by what are essentially a bunch of Rube Goldberg-esque happenstances is entertaining and tense as hell. The franchise really worked the dread and anticipation of these deaths down to a science. Final Destination 3 is definitely my favorite of the bunch. There's a lot of cool stuff in here, and I'd gladly check out more if they make any. Ghost in the Shell. You all know by now how I am vehemently not a fan of anime, and after the 2-hour migraine that was Akira, I was hesitant to give this a try, especially since I've seen the ScarJo remake and it was so bland I forgot everything about it. But I caved, and I checked this out, and I've gotta say, it was a vast improvement over Akira. You still get that beautiful, gigantic cyberpunk city rendered in gorgeous hand-drawn color with a plot that's actually, for the most part, comprehensible. And best of all, everybody's using their goddamn indoor voices. My biggest complaint is that Ghost in the Shell is way too short. Take away the credits, and I think it clocked in at like 75 minutes. It felt like it ended just as it was getting started. The Hills Have Eyes Part 2. After the terrifying original, The Hills Have Eyes Part 2 feels like a sillier, more watered-down retread that completely misses the point of the first one, and some of the acting is pretty rough to boot. Not much to say about this one. It's cool to see Janice Blythe back as Ruby again, but that's about it. Howls Moving Castle. So I kept riding the anime train after Ghost in the Shell, and I watched my very first Miyazaki film. And gosh darn it, it's pretty beautiful. This is such a joyous, colorful, optimistic fairy tale with a cast of terrific characters I couldn't help but root for. It's heavily anti-war and heavily pro-kindness. If you ask me, that's the meaning of frickin' life right there, man. If I had kids, I'd be showing this to them without question. It's just a lovely, lovely film. Can't wait to see more Studio Ghibli stuff. Ice Cream Man. Clint Howard plays a deranged ice cream man who murders people. That's it. That's everything you need to know. This movie is absolutely batshit. He's got a bunch of dead bugs and human eyeballs in his ice cream, and everything's disgusting. I can't tell if this is intentionally funny or accidentally funny, but sweet damn, is it ever funny. Kimmy. Just squeaking in at a little over a year old, Steven Soderbergh's latest movie with a script by David Koepp and a knockout lead performance by Zoe Kravitz is just an all-around fun, satisfying thriller. It's set very much in the present, with the world trying to claw its way out of the hole dug by the coronavirus. On top of that, it does that great thing with villains. You know, that thing movies and TV shows do where they make you hate the villains so much you can't wait to see them get their comeuppance. Kimmy does that. It does that in a very grounded 2022 kind of way, and it still works wonderfully. Kimmy's just a damn cool flick. Leprechaun. Folks, it takes real talent to make a character like this work. Thankfully, Warwick Davis has oodles of talent to spare. Without him, this whole film would fall apart like a graham cracker in a hot cocoa tsunami. The man is a national treasure, and watching Leprechaun just made me all the angrier that Disney had the gall to cancel his Willow series. And the double gall to pull it from their goddamn streaming service and essentially render it non-existent. No one should ever be depriving the world of Warwick Davis. Also, shout out to Kevin Kiner for filling this movie with sweet, innocent charm thanks to its sincere score. Make no mistake, R-rated kids movies exist, and one of them is Leprechaun. New Year's Evil. A guy with a wacky voice changer box is making crank calls to Hollywood Hotline on New Year's Eve, promising to keep murdering folks every hour on the hour until California's time zone hits midnight. I dig it. It's 80s LA sleaze at its greasiest. If Matt Reeves ever wants to implement Calendar Man into his Batman universe, this might be a good place to look for inspiration. It also has the most hilarious mosh pit I've ever seen in a motion picture. Stepfather 2. The original Terry O'Quinn film is a horrifying psychological thriller. Take it from a guy who grew up with stepfathers in his life. It tapped into a deep, primal fear. This sequel, however, contributes nothing new, opting instead to cop out the first one's ending just so it can give us more of the same. Damn, is it ever sad when that happens. I heard there's a direct-to-video Stepfather 3, but O'Quinn didn't even come back for that, so I'm not gonna bother. Super Mario Brothers. James Razile, you promised me this movie would be a masterpiece, and you weren't wrong. There are some popular films I have gone a long, long time without ever seeing, but always knew they were looming ahead of me, destined to finally be watched on some undetermined red-letter day, and Super Mario Bros. Was one of them. At some point, an executive at the now-defunct Hollywood Pictures label decided that Super Mario was synonymous with dinosaurs, and they went all in down that rabbit hole. What we get is a strange cyberpunk graffiti flick with T-Rexes, fungus, and only one mustache, despite the fact that Luigi's in this too. For me, the thread that holds this all together is the fantastic Alan Silvestri score. They don't make cinematic music like this anymore, kids. Depending on who you ask, this is either an underrated gem or one of the worst films ever made. I just think it's toe-tapping fun. The Thing, the 2011 version. Oh, to have been a fly on the wall in 2011 movie theaters. In a world of endless, pointless remakes, looking at you, Disney, it must have been so cool to discover that this flick was not a remake at all. Having the fact that this film is a prequel be the actual twist of the film itself was daring and unheard of. Unfortunately, back when this came out, I still hadn't seen the original Carpenter Thing, so this flew right by me. Even though the original is superior, this was an excellent, faithful addition to the story. And together, the two of them make one hell of a double feature. When a Stranger Calls. There's one heck of a twist about a third of the way through When a Stranger Calls, and I wouldn't feel right spoiling it here. But when I take it into account how deftly the script handles it, and how safe the early 2000s remake played it by comparison, I've got to give this movie some serious credit. It's the old babysitter and the man upstairs urban myth played to its fullest, grisliest limits for maximum effect. And it's the only time I've ever not found Carol Kane annoying. If you're as fascinated by modern urban legends as I am, you're bound to be shook by When a Stranger Calls. Not bad. Not bad. I mean, it's only 22 movies, so it wasn't going to be an epic, but there you go. I'm really hopeful Review Marathon 11 is going to be bigger than 22, but we'll see what happens, right? I don't want to jinx myself, but I'm glad I got to squeeze these ones in. They were a lot of fun. And mostly the reason that I was unable to watch so many is because I was in New York City for a week, and there will be a video coming up about all the stuff that I found and discovered in New York City. But that's going to take a long time to make because it's just, there's a lot of editing involved. So I can't promise it'll be here soon, but it will be here, period. Anyway, thank you so much for watching Review Marathon 10. I'm Andrew Fantasia. I will see you all next time, and until then, adios.